Hi everybody, this is Ryan from the Headwaters Science Center here, and who I have with me today are two of our critters that you'll probably see on the floor anytime you come in and visit with us, and these two are two male central bearded dragons. The one on my left here, the lighter colored one, his name is Pog, and this little guy over here is Leo. And you'll see them out on the exhibit floor. They're in two separate tanks because they're both male bearded dragons and they can be a little territorial with each other. But really what I want to talk about here today is you'll notice that these two are pretty different colors. And that's something you'll see with a few animals, and you see it a lot, especially with animals that end up kind of getting kept as pets, is you start seeing lots of different colors with them. And what's kind of interesting about that is, these two are different colors. They look very different from one another. You said Pog over here is kind of yellowish or orangish. You hear them called citrus dragons a lot of the time. Whereas Leo is more sort of the natural color, the kind you would find in a wild bearded dragon. Pog is getting a little territorial there. Like I said, they're two male bearded dragons, and you'll see him puffing his beard out and doing some posturing there to kind of try and establish dominance over Leo. And so this is the first time these two have really been in close with each other since we got them. So that's still kind of a cool display we're seeing there. But while he's squirming here, like I said, what we're going to be talking about today is how these guys are different colors and where that comes from. And so color in bearded dragons, much like it is in humans, is determined by genetics. And so genetics are basically the traits that get passed on to a critter from its parents. And so this applies to humans too. Things like human skin color and eye color and hair color is all stuff that you get from your parents. And so that applies to humans just as well as applies to bearded dragons, where we have two that are, very different colors, look very different from one another. But they are the same species still. If these were, they're from the same place, they're both Australian, it's just a matter of a little bit different level of pigment in their skins, which is, like I said, the same way it is for humans. Darker skin, darker hair just means a little more pigment in it. So we had our two bearded dragons that were two different colors, and like I said, those two different colors come from basically different levels of pigments in their skin. And one pigment that a lot of animals have, including humans, it's really the only one we have in our body, is called melanin. And melanin's a pretty common pigment. It's brown, so more melanin, like I said, tends to result in darker hair, darker skin, etc., etc. And most animals have melanin in them as well, including snakes. And so Sophie is another one of our critters that you will meet on the exhibit floor if you ever come and visit with us. And Sophie has kind of a unique condition where she is what is called amelanistic. And amelanistic means she does not make melanin. But you'll notice she does still have some color to her. She has some kind of orange and reds and yellows that you can see in her pattern here. And that's because snakes actually make a few different types of pigments. So they make melanin, and then they have like a yellow pigment that they make too. And so Sophie looks a little different than a corn snake in the wild probably would. But she does still make some, so she does still have some color to her. But you can have a lot of different variation in critters based on the amount and color of pigment that you're seeing. We got a very active bearded dragon just off screen, if you can hear that. But some critters don't make any pigments at all. And we call those albino, which is probably a word you've heard before. I'll put the lid back on Sophie. And so albinos, like Rosie here, you'll notice are pretty much completely white. Rosie is a common snapping turtle, another one of our critters here at the Science Center. And she looks very white or a little bit pink in a few places. And like I said, what albino means is they don't make any pigment at all. And so humans, for example, we only make melanin. That's our only pigment we have in everything. It colors our hair, it colors our eyes, it colors our skin. So an amelanistic human, like Sophie, would be the same thing as an albino. But albinism is kind of interesting because, like I said, it means they don't make any pigment. And pigment's there for a reason. It's important. It helps you survive. So think about when you get a suntan. The reason you're getting a suntan is because your skin is getting damaged from the sun, and in response it makes melanin to help protect it from the sun. And so that tan that you're getting is there to help protect you from sunlight. The color in your eyes, for example, is there to help protect your eyes from being damaged by light as well. And so animals like Rosie here, who are albino and don't make any of that pigment, can sometimes have some medical issues associated with it. So they're much more likely to get skin cancers. They're much more likely to go blind relatively young. And if you look really, really closely at Sophie, one of the things or Sophie too, but Rosie, is that one of the things you'll notice is that she has what looks to be red or pink eyes. And what's really nifty with that is that her eyes aren't actually red or pink, her eyes are actually clear, because her irises in her eyes don't have any pigment in them, so you just see all the way to the back of the eye, and you're seeing all those blood vessels back there that are not colored with a pigment, they're colored with iron. That's why they're red, like your blood, basically. And so albinism is a condition that, like I said, like most pigment things, is a product of genetics. And she's been very active right now. It's a product of genetics, and specifically it is a recessive condition. And what recessive means is that in order for Rosie to be albino, basically both of her parents had to not necessarily be albino themselves, but be carriers for it. And you can see this illustrated in what's called a Punnett square, which is something that you might learn in a high school level biology class, where it kind of illustrates how a trait might be expressed depending on who the parents are and what genetics the parents are passing on. Rosie actually had 2 albino siblings who don't live here at the Science Center. They live in some other places. But snapping turtles, their typical egg clutch is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 eggs. And so if you make out your Punnett square, you'll find that in a situation where you have 2 parents who are carriers for albinism, about 1 out of every 4 of their babies is going to be albino. And that about checks out. Like I said, there were 3 albinos in the clutch about 15 eggs. Not quite as many as you might expect, but pretty close. And we can be pretty confident that Rosie's parents probably weren't albino themselves, but were just carriers for albinism, because as a general rule, albino snapping turtles don't survive in the wild. Snapping turtles in a normal situation have a difficult time surviving in the wild when they're babies, but when you make them albino, and it makes it way harder for them to camouflage in the wild, plus all the stuff I talked about how they can have skin issues and vision issues, survival becomes near 0 for them. So, like I say, even for normal snapping turtles, easy. About, maybe 1 in 100 eggs that's laid makes it to adulthood. But for her, it'd probably be closer to, 1 in several thousand. So she's very lucky that she ended up here at the Science Center, because, like I said, she probably wouldn't have made it out in the wild. And that's generally what we like to do with animals here that we collect from the wild. We like to not just collect anyone we find, we like to find ones that are, need our help here, wouldn't make it out in the wild for whatever reason, and bring them here so they can be ambassador animals. So she's kind of cool because she's, a snapping turtle, which is a cool animal that we have right in the lakes around here, biggest reptile you're going to see around here, but also her interesting genetics make her kind of a cool topic to talk about as well. So that's albinism, that's pigments, that's even a little bit of genetics talk for you. Thanks for watching, guys.